Hare Kṛṣna.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Today we'll be studying Bhagavad-Gita, Chapter 3, KarmaYoga. Please join us for Jai Radha Madhava prayers. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome to today's study of Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, and in today's session we will be covering chapter 3, KarmaYoga. And here Srila Prabhupada states that everyone must engage in some sort of activity in this material world, but actions can either blind one to this world or liberate one from it. By acting for the pleasure of the Supreme without selfish motives, one can be liberated from the law of karma. Action and reaction attain transcendental knowledge of the Self and the Supreme. Please join us for the invocation prayers. They are given in the introduction section of Bhagavad-Gita as it is. Together. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaiham Dadati Swapadantikam Vande Aham Shri Guruhu Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Kṛṣna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapte Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Dear devotees, please join us in the recitation of the first verse of Srimad Bhagavad-Gita chapter 3 KarmaYoga. Together. Arjun Uvacha Jayasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Ghore Mam Niyojyasi Keshava. Translation by His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Arjun said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada describes the distinction that Arjuna is referring from is the Karma Yoga versus Buddhi Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. Hare Krishna, please join us for Guru Pranati. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshutarine Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripa Tadaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So in this chapter there are 4 major sections. So this chapter, as Acharyas have provided their commentary and Srila Prabhupada's purpose, and the conversation between Lord Krsna and Arjuna has been further subdivided into 4 sections. Section 1 through 9 refers to action, right? What is the right action? So there are two kind of actions that have been discussed. First one is referring to, he is saying that, if you think that knowledge is better than devotional service, so he's looking from the Jnana Yoga perspective, Arjun, right? And he is saying that your equivocal words are, bewildering me. So Lord Krsna did not confuse. He had no intention of confusing Arjun, but the whole second chapter was focused on contents of Gita summarized. So all subject matters were discussed, all kind of yogas, all kind of thought processes, the knowledge of the soul, the knowledge of the purpose of this material world, and what is the goal of life. All of them were just condensed in that one chapter, and that's why it appears that Arjun is bewildered, but he's actually an eternal associate of Lord Shri Krishna. So this bewilderment, Acharya has explained, is for our benefit. That when Arjun has doubts, he is not just keeping the doubts to himself and taking the path based on his understanding. He is showing the qualification of a disciple. He is showing that what is the definition of disciple? One who is ready to be disciplined. So if one is not ready to be disciplined, then he is not really a disciple. He is just making a show of disciple. And one who is not devoted in serving Krishna, then he is not a devotee. So these are basic definitions that we should understand. So we understand that one who is just carrying out in words but not really acting out in their actions, mind, body and words, all three, then they are referred to as pretender in this chapter, chapter 3. And the word in Sanskrit is Pashandi, and in Hindi we have this word Pakhandi, which is referring to a person who walks but does not walk the talk. So again, he's just talking. He's only speaking, but he's not really carrying out in his actions those behaviors. So such a person is Pakhandi. And that's why, means in Srimad Bhagavatam, when we study Srimad Bhagavatam, we start from the first canto, second canto, progress accordingly, not directly jump to the 10th canto. And Srila Prabhupada, he was very merciful that he first wrote Kṛṣṇa book because he wanted to provide that transcendental pastimes of Lord Shri Krishna, his name, form, activities, pastimes, along with his commentary in the subject matter of Kṛṣṇa book, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the 10th canto he further expanded. And of course, as he is expanding, his sometimes commentary seems to contradict, but there is no contradiction, because he is referring to Vasudeva Krishna, and then he is saying that there is Krishna in Vrindavan who never steps out, which is perfectly aligned with the commentary of the Acharyas. So we have to understand with the right context, so that we can, dive into the deep subject matters. And these are sometimes so deep that it's easy for person who's not qualified, who's not able to understand and not go step by step, to get bewildered. And when devotees read the scriptures, they read to learn the lessons from the scriptures, so that they can understand that these are the mistakes we should not commit. When non-devotees read scriptures, then they read to blaspheme. Oh, see this personality, he was so bad because he did this. So they are pointing fingers to a person, and such people also get very much easily attracted to people who are very good speakers. They provide the discourses from the scriptures in a very flowery language, and they are also very much attracted to the flowery language of the Vedas, which has been also described in this chapter by Srila Prabhupada. So we have to understand, of course, Srila Prabhupada always said, dress before address. And so we prepare before we discuss. So again, there is preparation before, it's part of the study, to dive deeper, not stay on the surface, but dive deeper into the subject matter. Because this is transcendental knowledge presented in the form of Song of God. Bhagavad-Gita means Song of God. So first 9 verses, Lord Krsna is identifying action. So what is the right action? So even with taking to renounce work is also an action, right? Because it has been decided by proper contemplation of the scenario, and an action has been, a decision has been taken. That decision is also an action. And so Arjuna is saying, please tell me, should I renounce work or should I work, with renounced mindset, which is not, for selfish motive? Should I, not do with selfish motive, but just work as a duty? And he is getting bewildered because he is saying, why are you pulling me in this ghastly warfare if you think that renouncing work is better? So he has misunderstood the message that Lord Krsna is saying. And as a disciple, he is setting an example that he is posing that question in front of Krishna. So when we have doubts, we should present it in front of our spiritual master, in front of the acharyas, in front of the sadhus. And we should consult the scriptures where we can get the knowledge. So proper understanding so that we can act accordingly. Now, Srila Prabhupada, he in the purport is very nicely identifying that, when the material universe was created, many material universes were created. We are in a very small material universe. And in this material universe, we are on a very small planet. There are unlimited planets. And on this planet, there are many countries. And we are in one country. And within that country, we are in one city and our residents are on one state. So there are numerous, unlimited, living entities in this material world, just as there are unlimited forms of Lord Shri Kṛṣna. And so first is Lord Kṛṣna reveals his, decision. He is identifying to Arjuna that it is selfless work. Now sometimes people say selfless work, they get bewildered. They think of Brahman. So you are not self at all, you are Brahman. So that should not be the understanding. The understanding should be that it is done without self-motivation. Ahetuki apratihata yayatma suprasiddhati. That would satisfy the self. When it is carried out without any motivation, self-motivation for sense enjoyment. However, 10 through 16 is where the sacrifice aspect is described. And so actually that's where basically the various yoga letters, the progression in the KarmaYoga phases. So within KarmaYoga there are different steps, as we would see. Yoga means linking to the Supreme. Karma means action. So if you look at karma on its own, then it is just action. But at the same time, we will also study in Bhagavad-Gita there are three kinds of actions: karma, vikarma, and akarma. So when we go to the transcendental knowledge chapter, that gets introduced, and Srila Prabhupada in the purport here gives a glimpse to those aspects. Now this particular KarmaYoga chapter, chapter 3, is different from KarmaYoga in Krishna consciousness, which is chapter 5, is because this is telling us how to stay on level 0. So stay on the same plane. So if you look at it, and not go below that level 0. So by understanding this chapter, we understand that you have to at least come to level 0, and if you are at negative, you have to come back to that level 0 with proper understanding. And then after that is described, so again comes the various aspects of how to engage in KarmaYoga with detachment, and that is done to set an example. So how to be a model citizen, how to be a model husband, how to be a model wife, that particular mindset has been explained, how to be exemplary, properly. And then the last one is, which is again from 17 to 35, is that how we should act, what should be the mindset, and how can we be detached from the fruits of our action. That has been described from 17 to 35. And then finally our greatest enemy has been described from 36 to 43, 43rd verse. And who is our greatest enemy? Again, what is the limitation? Who limits us? We ourselves, our own limitation. And our greatest enemy is lust. Lord Krsna reveals that. Kamesha, Krodesha, Rajoguna Samudbhava.
Mahashano Mahapapna Vidyam Iha Varinam. Vari means where, means he is your greatest enemy. So here, in the first section, where renunciation of work or work in devotion, working with renouncing the fruits of the work, has been discussed. And Lord Krsna chooses Arjun, who is a Kshatriya, and he is also a Grihastha. So it's not that, Bhakti Yoga or, Bhagavad-Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, study of the scriptures or taking to devotion service is only meant for renunciates. Rather, it is meant for all ashrams and all varnas. And Srimad Bhagavatam has been specially meant for the Kali age. Krishne swadhamo padyate dharma jnana dibi saha kalonashtra drisham mesha puranarka dhunoditaha. Srimad Bhagavatam is just like a brilliant sun that arose right after, that has arisen right after Lord Krsna returned back home, back to Godhead, went back to Golok Vrindavan, along with knowledge and religion and many other great qualities. So people who have lost their vision in this material world will get light from this Puran. This is reference to Srimad Bhagavatam, which is also called as a literary incarnation of Lord Shri Krishna. Bhagavad-Gita is Song of God, which is also non-different from Krishna. So name, form, activities, pastimes of Lord Krishna are non-different from him. So when we read Bhagavad-Gita, we are in direct contact with Lord Shri Krishna and we are worshipping him. When we are studying Bhagavad-Gita, we are worshipping him by our intelligence, as Lord Krishna reveals as well. So now Arjun is bewildered, right? And Srila Prabhupada, he is identifying that yes, religion is important as well as the philosophy is also very important. We have to act with knowledge. And religion without philosophy is sentiment, or it can sometimes become fanaticism. While philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So if you take either side as exclusively, then it becomes incomplete and causes us to deviate from the path. So we have to be balancing the knowledge, the philosophy with respect to religion, dharma, our occupational duties. And that has been identified in this particular chapter, where Arjun is getting bewildered. He wanted to renounce, and take to renounce order of life, even decide to beg and give up this warfare, because he saw all these relatives are gathered here. He was forgetting his swadharma, his prescribed duties. And prescribed duties are something which are born of our nature as well as our activities that we are normally engaged in. So that's born of our nature. And Arjun was a Kshatriya. He was meant to fight there. And Lord Krishna is reminding him that no, you have to engage in your prescribed duties. However, don't be attached with the fruits of your labor. So that has been identified, that work with devotion has to be done. Now, here in this chapter, as Lord Krsna is explaining, and Arjun is saying your equivocal words. So again, Lord Krsna made it very clear, but he is now presenting it in a much more analytical and elaborate manner, systematic manner, so that Arjun can understand. And Lord Krsna starts with that everybody has to work to sustain themselves, right? It is not, so work has to be done to sustain oneself. But if work is done only for sense enjoyment, that causes bewilderment and fall down of living entity. And then he further describes that as well. So now in the 6th verse, Lord Krsna, actually let's just go from the perspective. So by abstaining from work, one cannot attain freedom from reaction. So if, say for example, we get hurt, while playing or doing something, and if we say, okay, I'm not going to do anything, I'm going to not touch anything, that doesn't mean that the injury that we have sustained can't heal itself. We have to take proper action. And so sometimes when taking proper action is to nullify the further deterioration. And one of the interesting examples, so again I'm presenting some of the examples that are beyond the book, because these refer to the current age, and this has come from various discussions and various study matters from Bhagavad-Gita, on Bhagavad-Gita, that we have held in the past as well. So we have to make corrective action. So sometimes people, they seek for prayashchitta, right? So if you get hurt on injury, you apply medicine, balm and other factors, and you properly provide bandage and other factors so that you can heal it quickly. So by healing it quickly, you are coming back from negative to your current state, which is your neutral state. Now when you do exercise, then you are becoming strong, then you are rising from 0 to higher. And that is what is discussed near the end of this chapter and in the 4th and 5th chapter, and heavily discussed in 5th chapter, KarmaYoga in Kṛṣṇa consciousness. So just by abstaining the senses from the work, but our mind, if it dwells on the sense object, so again that has been also identified, that is called pretending, and such a person is called pretender. And Lord Krsna says that perform your prescribed duties, because doing so is better than not working. And one cannot even sustain their body without action, without performing various activities. 9th verse is very important, where Lord identifies what is the purpose, why do we have to act, and how we should act. So text 9 is Yagyadhat karmano anyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadatham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. So he is saying work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain free from bondage. So Lord Krsna also reveals in the peace formula verse 647, Bhoktaram yagya tapasam. So he is the beneficiary of all sacrifices. So all sacrifices that we perform are meant to serve Lord Shri Krishna. Otherwise, if we don't offer it, the fruits of the labor as well as the sacrifice for Lord Shri Krishna, if we don't perform for Vishnu, then it will cause bondage. Now this bondage, you can understand, bondage is like, we are caught up. If someone's hand and legs have been tied up with ropes, it's very difficult for them to move, and they are completely at the mercy of the person who has tied them. So who's tying them? We got the glimpse in the 2nd chapter, means again where the 3 modes of material nature. Material nature is the one who is tying the living entities. And so either we serve Krishna or we serve Maya. Maya is also represented in the form of our senses, the sense objects, all the gross elements and the subtle elements, as we'll be learning further. And when the humans were being sent, so that's why human life is very important, has been elaborated. That when Lord, he provided human race as well as the demigods, he made a perfect arrangement between the demigods and the humans, so that humans would perform sacrifices to satisfy Lord Krsna, like Lord Vishnu. So these sacrifices will please the demigods, because when we perform sacrifice, we offer various kind of oblations in the sacrifice, and these are the offerings that are distributed to all the demigods, and so they become happy because they are properly nourished. So they become happy, they can sustain themselves, so they provide all kind of facilities to the humanity. And so the weather, the climate and everything is very nicely managed. All the Adidevic aspects are very nicely managed. Yet at the same time, to perform yajna is important, and what is the yajna for the current age? Somebody can ask, right? Because the moment we think of yajna, we think of fire sacrifice. So it has been revealed in the scriptures, Krite tadadhyayate vishnum tretayam yajato makehe dvapare paricharyayam kalo tadhari kirtanat. Krite tadadhyayate vishnum. In the Satyuga, just by meditating on the Lord Krsna, we can, Lord Vishnu, Vishnu Tattva again, expansion of portion or primary portion of Krsna, we can attain liberation. So that is the sacrifice for Kritayag, Satyuga. Then what happened was that austerity diminished. So there are four, aspects, four limbs of religion. So austerity diminished, cleanliness was still there. So the six kind of cleanliness enable us to perform fire sacrifices. So Kritetat Yajato Make. So the fire sacrifices were the mode of sacrifice in Treta Yuga. Tretayam Yajato Make. Dvapare Parichayayam. Now cleanliness also went away, but mercy was there. So by taking two pilgrimage journeys and serving Lord Shri Krishna, who appeared, his lotus feet, who appeared in Dwapara Yuga, and the temple worship was highly encouraged, because that was the yajna for Dwapara Yuga. And then Kala Tadhari Kirtanad, and Sankirtan yajna is the yajna for the current age. And Lord Krishna, he appeared as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he started the Sankirtan Yajna movement. He actually propagated, which simply starts with the chanting of the holy name. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. So, in the Shastras, again, nobody can just take incarnate and call themselves incarnation of God. Srila Prabhupada said that in every city, in every street in India, people say, oh, they are, avatar, and Krishna is avatari. So they are saying that we are avatar, we are incarnation of Lord Vishnu or Lord Krsna. Well, then there must be proper, mention of those incarnations in the scriptures, in the revealed scriptures. Just like for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it has been very nicely, revealed. Krishna varam trusha krishnam sangopasada pashadam yagya sankirtana praya yajanti hi sumedhasaha. In this age of Kali, people who are endowed with sufficient intelligence, sumedhasaha, will worship the Lord, who is accompanied by his associates. And he is Krishna, but Tusha Krishna, but he is golden complexion, he is not dark. And he will propagate in this Kali age by performance of Sankirtan Yajna. He would propagate Sankirtan Yajna in the current age. So this is where the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has been revealed. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears in the mood of Radharani. She is the topmost devotee of Lord Shri Krishna. And so, after Lord Krishna reveals that yajna has to be performed for Lord Vishnu to satisfy, and that would satisfy the demigods. And sometimes people who are very much attracted to the flowery language of Vedas, they want to perform yajnas as per the Vedas for their specific situations, so that they elevate. Now Srila Prabhupada reveals that how does it help? Whether you are in a jail, whether you are in a third class jail or second class jail or first class air conditioned jail, you are still in jail, and the miseries will always be there. So the true solution is to seek out solution for the miseries. Jan mrityu jara vyadhi dukha doshanudarshanam. So we should find out what is the solution from this repeated cycle of birth, death, old age and disease, and that is very important. So again, from 10 to 16 is the rungs of the yoga ladder, as how we expand from the bottom to higher stage. From where we are, how do we rise above? That's what we should be looking at. So it is this, the scriptures are not for us to tell others what they should be doing. It is for us to learn the lessons so that we can implement it in our life for our self-improvement. It's for our own introspection and our own progress. So that's how we should be taking it. And so in this case, there is in this particular section where Lord Krsna is identifying, and I'll quickly cover the various, within Karma Yoga phases, there are various phases that come in, right? First is one who is engaging without knowing, just trying to enjoy senses, right? So that is karmi. Such a person who doesn't know what the purpose of life is, but is engaged in hard work and day and night so that he can acquire wealth for sense enjoyment. Not just to sustain his living, but he's going further beyond that. And I have given this example in the past, that there was a person at the vending machine and they're putting a quarter, pressing the button for a drink, and the drink, the Coke can would just drop to the bottom and they will pick it out. And the person was like really getting excited. And the vending machine said that 25 cents to get a quarter, so to get a can of Coke. So they're putting a quarter, pressing the button, they're getting the Coke. And there was a long line behind this person. So there was an old man right behind the person. He said, why are you, asking for more quarters, and when will you be done? How much do you need? The person just said, don't you see I'm winning? So to the person's mind, it was a gambling scenario. They were thinking the more I will get, the more happy I will become. But actually it will become the cause of the misery, right? So that is very important for us to understand, that we should not get bewildered. So that's the lowest stage. People are just thinking that this will make me happy. But the target always moves from them. So once they attain one target, suddenly the target has moved to the next one. And that is actually child's mentality. We have seen that when children, when we were child, we know from our own experience that we would ask for a toy, we cry for that toy, and then when the parents provide the toy, we play with it for a little while, and then we put it aside and we are asking for the next toy. So this is how material energy bewilders us. So we should be very careful of the nature of material energy, and especially in this Kali age. It is very effective. So Lord Krsna is saying that the work will be binding if it's not done as a sacrifice for Lord Vishnu. Now in the 13th verse, where this ranks has been discussed, so this is a karmi stage, right? We are seeking sense gratification. And higher than that is when we properly understand what is the purpose, right? Why am I doing this action? Why am I here? Then at the same time we still have this mood to enjoy, right? So, but at the same time we are following the injunctions of the Shastra to engage in work which is based on the civil duties. So if we are living in a country or in a state, we follow the civil duty as what has been prevalent as rules and regulations, and we follow them. That comes at the karma kanda level, not yet at a higher level. It's like you do this, you get this. And there is also mode of sense enjoyment, but it is the right way of sense enjoyment, not the wrong way. At the bottom level is the verse is vikarma, not understanding the prescribed way of working, using shortcuts, causing havoc to other people. Just like today's scientists, they receive the knowledge, but they should have used the knowledge for advancement of the society, but they are using it for profit. So they are genetically modifying the grains and all the various vegetables and fruits, so that they have large produce, and the large produce does not go bad quickly, so that they can store it in a warehouse and cause scarcity in the market, so they can gain better profits. So this has become the motive of modern civilization, which is exactly this is like not even following prescribed duty, is falling down. Rather, we should rise above that. If we have the knowledge, knowledge comes with great responsibility, where we should follow our prescribed duties in the right manner. We should act so that, and that is karma kanda. You do this, you get this. And people, they sometimes get so much engaged that when they go to the temple, they start doing the same thing with Lordship as well. They say, oh my dear Lordship, give you so and so. But they are still called pious at this level. Now, higher than that is Sakam Karma. So, Sakam Karma Yogi is one who is Karma Yogi. He understands that it is to please Lord Kṛṣna, but he is still attached to the fruit. However, he is somewhat regulated in his. And higher than Sakam Karma Yogi is the Nishkam Karma Yogi. That is Karma Yoga in Kṛṣna consciousness. So, we get glimpse of that knowledge, when we are aware that actually if somebody, so this old person tells this person who is at the vending machine that actually that is the nature of this machine, that you put a quarter and if you press a button, then a Coke can will come out and you can come and take it anytime. And don't fear that the cans will run out, because there is a person who comes daily and he loads the vending machine again full. So that is what is happening in our life. People are so much in this rat race that they forget that we have 24 hours. And then after 24 hours, the cycle repeats itself. So the day and night cycle that repeats itself. And we should just work enough to sustain our livelihood. And should follow based on the injunctions of the Shastras, Sadhu and Guru. So we should always be using those as our references. So here, another aspect is introduced in the 13th verse, when these phases within karma cycle has been identified. Yagya shishtaha shinah santo muchyante sarvakil vishe bhunjate te tvagham papa ye pachantatma karanat. So, devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins. So, when we perform it for the pleasure of Lord Kṛṣna, then all kind of sins we are relieved from. So, now we are rising from above zero to higher level, right? Because we eat food, it's called prasad. Prasad is called, means mercy of the Lord. So prasad which has been offered. So when we prepare the food stuff, it's called bhoga. We make an offering of bhoga to the Lordship, and when the remnants of bhoga that has been blessed by the Lordship, he eats them through his eyes, it is said, then accepted as prasad by the devotees. And Srila Prabhupada explains that when we eat prasad, then it actually nourishes our body, and our memory is properly set, because the finer tissues of our memory is developed with the help of this prasad, the mercy of the Lord, the food stuff that has been offered to Lord Kṛṣna. Otherwise, people who eat food stuff without offering it are actually verily eating only sin. So they are eating only sin means that they are going to be punished when if you have not performed prayashchita, if you have not performed penances to nullify the sins, then you are punished. And so Lord Kṛṣna says, Annad bhavanti bhutani parjanyad anna sambhava yagyad bhavati parjanyo yagya karma samudbhava. All living bodies subsist on food grains which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by the performance of yagya, sacrifice, and yagya is born of prescribed duties. Now, what are the prescribed duties? That has been explained later in chapter 4, the transcendental knowledge. But here Lord is revealing that our bodies, our sustenance is on food grains. And the food grains, again, this is the collaboration between humanity and demigods. So we make an offering, we perform sacrifice, and so that sacrifice is like, when we perform Sankirtan Yagya, and this is also Kirtan, then it is like watering the roots of a tree. And the demigods are like the branches of the tree. So all parts of the tree, everybody, all living entities in the universe are satisfied. When we water the roots of the tree, then all the twigs, the branches, the leaves, all of them are satisfied. Similarly, the demigods are satisfied, even other living entities are satisfied, and so they becoming happy, they provide all the favorable conditions so that with rain food grains can grow, and food grains they sustain us. So that is something very important. Now 17 to 35 is where Lord Kṛṣna, he is revealing how to live this life, how to, while working with detachment to the fruits of one's labor, how we should work, and so that we can sustain ourselves as well as grow spiritually. So that particular aspect has been identified. That a person who is self-realized, he has no purpose for the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor he has any reason. Yet at the same time, he performs his prescribed duties without attachment to the fruits. And so that is how the work has to be done, and should be done as a matter of duty. And higher than duty is with love. So that is revealed in the 5th chapter. But I am giving you a glimpse as for the coming attraction. That yes, here in this chapter, Lord Krsna is identifying to rise above our current stage, to at least start performing as a duty. That this is with the right mindset we should be performing. In the 4th chapter, he is providing us knowledge as why. Why do we perform it as a duty? He's revealing those aspects. And then in the 5th chapter, we further rise above. And when we come to the 6th chapter, in the very beginning, the first verse and then the last verse. So in the very beginning as well as at the end of 6th chapter, again Lord Krsna reveals and comes back that one has to engage in devotional service. And a yogi, a devotee who is engaged in devotional service is the topmost yogi. He even reveals that. So 17 through 35 is focusing on working without attachment. Now Lord Krsna is revealing this to Arjuna because he wants Arjuna to fight, right? Because the purpose Vasudeva appeared was to deliver the burden of the earth. And he is calling Arjuna by various names: Gudakesha, one who has conquered sleep, and Parantapa, the chastiser of the enemy. Rise up and start, and fight. So he's telling what he wants. That would be the right sacrifice. So he, first of all, he has picked up a grahastha, and he has not said, Arjun, you give up your family life and go to the forest and become a renunciate. No. You have to perform your prescribed duties born of your nature and the activities you engage in. And then he is saying that do it without attachment to the fruits, with that detachment as a sacrifice for Vishnu. That would, elevate us from our current state. And he is giving various examples. He gives the example of King Janak, who was a self-realized soul, yet he engaged in performing his prescribed duties. He took care of his citizens of his kingdom, just like as if they were his own children. So this Janak is father of Sita Mata, the father-in-law of Lord Ramchandra. He has been glorified here. And 21st verse is very important verse. He is saying, Lord Krsna says, Yad yad acharati sheshtas tat tad evetaro janaha sayat parmanam kurute lokas tad anuvartate. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So he is saying, and this is where he is calling out to all the leaders of the world. Srila Prabhupada is actually in the purport is calling out that everyone should be performing, work in Krishna consciousness, should be engaged in devotional service. So it is not just, for a specific part of the society, but everyone should take to devotional service so that others can learn from them. And we have seen, in this world today, if we see the celebrities, whatever actions they are performing, everyone, tries to copy them. That is the basis, that's the foundation of advertisement industry. Something that cannot be, sold because it has no qualities is being sold like that. We see some of the Bollywood actors and Hollywood actors and actresses, they go out and they are saying, oh, drink this, open happiness for Coke. It's actually open miseries, right? It has no qualities, no nutrition, no proper ingredients to help our body. But then these actors and actresses, they are going and saying that this is open happiness, while actually in reality, even they know that it is open misery. It's got so much of bad chemicals, so much sugar, everything is going to actually drain away the nutrition from our body instead of providing nutrition. But people follow. Why? Because this verse, Lord Krsna is revealing that whatever great man does, common men follow. Yad yad acharati sheshas tatta devetaro janaha. General populace just follow them. So this is a blind leading a blind. And there is a great need in today's society for the leaders to become Krishna conscious so that their actions are proper. They are not driven by this lust, and that is coming up again. That would be from 36 to 43. Those verses will be discussing it, verses where lust has been discussed as how that causes everyone to fall down. So it's a blind leading a blind to this world, that we should be very careful and not follow such leaders, but rather follow leaders, great leaders like Srila Prabhupada. Follow great leaders like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami, the Vaishnavas, the sadhus. And he says that even though he has no work prescribed for him in the three worlds, he has no duty to perform, he doesn't want anything, yet at the same time Lord Krsna himself, he is Yogeshwar. He himself is engaged in carrying out his prescribed duty based on his position as he is appearing. He is appearing as son of Vasudeva, right? And so, as a son of a Kshatriya, he is showing how to perform the prescribed duty as a Kshatriya. He is also showing himself as a householder. He has 16,008 wives. And he is showing how to be a great householder. In Srimad Bhagavatam, elaborately it's described as how wonderful Krsna is. And he's amazing as how he is showing. And he is also showing the example that the great leaders sometimes have to endure great pain, just like Lord Shiva. He, when Halahal emerged from the churning of the ocean, he drank that ocean and kept it on his throat. He didn't just took it to his stomach, he kept it in his throat. And because of the effect of halahal, such a strong poison, his throat turned blue. So another name for Lord Shiva is Nilkantha. And it was Goddess Durga who pacified and who helped him. So again, yet at the same time, Srila Prabhupada said that people, they don't understand this behavior. They say, oh, we are Lord Shiva's followers, and they smoke ganja and all kind of nonsense, like all kind of abominable things, and they call themselves as devotee of Lord Shiva. That is not a devotee of Lord Shiva, that is actually defaming the great name of Lord Shiva. Rather, we should be following the example that he is taking away miseries of others and giving them, so that's benefiting to the humanity. Is giving them an opportunity to progress spiritually. So, ignorant people only, they perform activities bound to the results, and these results have, they lead to miseries. And further, one should understand from this example that one should act for the benefit of others, leading people on the right path. And we have so many wonderful examples on that from the Shastras. Then comes 27th verse, which is also very important. Prakate kriya marani gure karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. The spirit soul, we the living entities, bewildered by the influence of the false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities, and that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. Here Lord Krsna calls out the three modes of material nature specifically. Mode of goodness, sattva guna, mode of passion, rajaguna, mode of ignorance, tamoguna. So they have been called out here. And he is saying that a person, is thinking that all activities that I am performing, that those activities are actually the cause of these fruits, so I should enjoy these fruits. And Srila Prabhupada, on his per-person lectures on KarmaYoga, has elaborately described that, eat, sleep, mate, defend. These are the basic activities that even animals perform. Cats and dogs and hogs, they also perform. So similarly, we have seen that in this material world, the three modes of material nature, they influence humans. And so based on the financial status, people carry out if you are poor, you live in a hut, but you build a hut for your protection. You have food stuff. It may not be so opulent, but whatever food stuff you have. So what happens is, when somebody acquires wealth, they change their houses, they change their lifestyle, they change the way they dress, they change their company and so forth. One thing does not change. Srila Prabhupada reveals that even in 1970s, when there were hippies, right? So they had renounced everything. He said, you American boys and girls, you have renounced your homes, you have renounced your rich fathers, you have renounced the social ways, but you could not renounce one thing, which is sex attraction. So again, that sense of sense gratification. And Srila Prabhupada reveals it as a skin disease. And it is this attraction, the sensual pleasure, that thinking in this manner, that is what is putting us in shackles in this material world. So we talked about where Lord Krsna says that such a person is bound in this material world. So what is the way they are bound? This is the shackles. These are the shackles, seeking sense enjoyment, and of them the topmost is seeking sensual pleasure. So again, from that perspective, it has been very nicely explained here. And Lord Krsna, he is basically calling out to Arjuna that you are the mighty armed one, Mahabaho. Don't engage your senses in sense gratification, and understand the difference between work in devotion and work for fruitive results. Work with attachment is a calm, that attachment. So don't be bewildered by the three modes of material nature. Just like ignorant fools, they get engaged in the material activities and they further become attached, and so they get caught in the shackles. And these shackles cause them to suffer. And they do this because of the lack of knowledge, poor fund of knowledge. And then he is inciting Arjuna to fight. And how does he incite? He is basically saying, Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya dhatma chetasa nirasir nirmamo bhutva yuddha sva vigata jivaraha. Therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all works unto me. He is giving a direct indication, do as I say, right? With full knowledge of me, understanding who I am, that Lord Krsna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without desire for profit, again. So this is where we talked about in the second chapter, that sthit pragya stage, absolutely right, transcending the three modes of material nature, away from the dualities, good and bad, heat and cold, happiness, distress, profit and loss, all this. So without desire for profit, without looking at the relative aspects, dualities, with no claim of proprietorship. So again, Lord Krsna later reveals Parusham Nishu, I am the ability in man, and free from lethargy, fight. So he is telling Arjuna directly that your prescribed duty as Kshatriya is to fight, so get up and fight. And those who disregard this, they only suffer in this material world. And as Lord Krsna, he continues to explain to Arjuna how work has to be performed. He reveals, so again, this is where from 36 to 43, Lord Krsna reveals the greatest enemy, our greatest enemy. And when we know our enemy, then we want to know, where does the enemy reside? He tells us where the enemy resides and how we can overcome this enemy. So he gives us all three aspects. First is knowing your enemy, then finding is where your enemy is, and third is how to defeat your enemy. All three aspects have been very nicely described from 36 to 43. So it is in the 37th verse, Lord Krsna reveals, Kamesha krodesha rajoguna samudbhava bahashano mahapapma vidyayena miha varinam. And this is where Lord Krsna says that it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion. So he talked about the three modes. So it is the mode of passion that causes this lust. And this lust finally leads to anger. If you get what you want, then you become too proud, and finally you lead to anger in due course of time. And if you don't find it, you become angry. So that's the effect of lust. And it turns into wrath, which is all devouring sinful enemy of the world. Not just the person who is getting angry, but it is a devouring enemy of all the world. Everyone around that person is affected by that anger, that wrath the person shows. And this response comes, why is Lord Krsna revealing? Because Arjuna asked this question that, my dear Krishna, O descendant of Vishnu, by what is one compelled, one is impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force. So this is where he is showing that sometimes person has a tendency to engage in sinful activities. Srila Prabhupada gave a very nice example that one person, a person was a thief. So this thief finally got motivated to go on a pilgrimage. So when he went on a pilgrimage, he was with a lot of people. So he went to the place, and what he would do is he was incited at night. He would wake up and he wanted to steal, but he decided not to steal. So all he did was he picked up one person's luggage, put it at another person's place, put that luggage, put it at someone else's place, put that luggage. So in the morning, everyone was thinking that their stuff is stolen, right? Because they don't find it where it was. And he says, I'm sorry, actually I'm a thief, so I could not stop myself. So what I didn't steal anything, I just moved them around so that you feel that it's stolen. And sometimes this happens. Things move around in our life, and sometimes we think that they have been taken away from us. In reality, what has been provided to us is just sufficient for our purpose. But here, this is as if impelled by nature, the thief. The lesson here is of the thief, he could not give up his nature. So as if impelled by force, person, we have samskaras. Samskaras are impressions from our many, many lives. And so these impressions don't go away. We have to remove those impressions by taking to the chanting of the holy name. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare. Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. Only then, when we continue to chant the holy name in the right mood, in humble mood, with tolerance, and seeking to give pleasures to Lord Shri Kṛṣna, not expecting any respect from others, but ready to give all respect to others, with this mood, when we're in a prayerful mood, chanting with that mood of gratitude, understanding that, yes, Lord Kṛṣna, you are very merciful, you have provided me this life, you have provided me this human birth, which is rare to attain. So then we will be able to progress further. And Cheto Darpanamajam, and the dust on our heart, the mirror of our heart will be removed. So this dust represents all these samskaras. And wrath on its own is not bad. Wrath driven out of lust is bad. Because devotees, they have used wrath. Because when Lord Kṛṣna is telling Arjuna to get up and fight, O chastiser of the enemies, get up and fight, he is saying, engage your wrath in killing your enemy, in carrying out your prescribed duties. Another wonderful example is Hanumanji. Hanumanji, he used his wrath to set Lanka, the golden Lanka, on fire. When his tail was put on fire, he used that fire. So what we receive from the world may be a bad thing, but we can turn it into a good result. So he used that wrath to destroy Lanka, which is favorable for Lord Ramchandra. And then Lord Kṛṣna is identifying that this lust covers us at different levels. Just like an embryo in the womb, it is covered by the womb. Similarly, the trees, so this represents, Acharya has explained, the commentary Srila Prabhupada explains in his purport, is just like trees, they are completely in, their consciousness is covered. So the awareness of the world is covered. And just like the mirror is covered by dust, so that is for us humans, right? Actually, the fire is covered by smoke is for humans, where when you see smoke, then you know it is caused by fire, right? So the presence of smoke identifies that there is fire. So that is for humans, that the human life, when we have human life, we are covered by lust to the level, but there is a great possibility for us to transform lust into love. What is lust in human life? Basically, lust is a perverted reflection of our love for Lord Shri Kṛṣna, Shri Radha Krishna. So that is pervertedly, because we are covered, we do not know what's what, but our nature is to love. But since we cannot see Lord Krishna with our dull senses, Shri Radha Krishna with our dull senses, but we see our senses. And our senses and the influence of material nature, the three modes of material nature, drive us for sense gratification, thinking that yes, you satisfy us. And it is like trying to put out a fire by putting more kerosene or more clarified butter in the fire. That will never satisfy the fire. It will actually blaze fire stronger. It will go ablaze. It will become stronger. So we need to understand that lust is the cause. It's our greatest enemy. And just like a mirror is covered by dust, so this is the case in the case of birds and beasts. So in the animal kingdom, we see in the birds, we see that they are covered, just like mirror is covered by dust. So when you cannot even see your image in the mirror because it is covered by dust. So these three examples, these three analogies are given by Lord Shri Krishna. But he says that the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. So he is identifying living entities, and living entities have different yonis, right? Different bodies, 8.4 million bodies. So that has been revealed here. And then Lord Krishna identifying the enemy, where does the enemy reside? So Lord Krishna, he says, where your enemy resides, the senses, the mind and the intelligence. He's revealing to Arjuna that these are the sitting places of lust. And this lust covers the real knowledge of the self, right? And so one gets bewildered because one does not know what's what, right? Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? All these questions stay unanswered. And the only thing person is feeling is that if I satisfy my senses, I am happy. And so he's engaging even in sinful activities as if forced by the influence of these samskaras, the impressions of many, many birds being influenced that way. And transfer of desire happens. Sometimes somebody sees, oh, that person is so rich, he's got so many things, I want to be rich. And then they, by hook or crook, they want to become rich. And that causes all kind of sinful acts. Then Lord Krishna reveals in the 42nd verse that the working senses are superior to the dull matter. So the sense objects are dull, right? Maya is jada. It is non-moving. It cannot act on its own. Everything that is happening, moving and functioning, all these actions and reactions are happening because of the influence of the presence of a living entity. So there has to be a conscious being there to make things happen. So the senses are being driven by the living entity. They are like the tools that we have. And mind is higher than the senses. And intelligence is even higher than the mind. And the soul is the highest. So the soul at the highest position should be driving with the right direction. But for that, the soul has to understand, who am I? Jivera Sarupoya Kṛṣṇa Nityadas. I am the eternal servant of Lord Shri Krishna. And with that mindset, as a matter of duty at least, we should perform our actions as a sacrifice for Lord Vishnu, Lord Kṛṣṇa, so that they don't bind us in this material world, rather remove the sinful reactions and help us elevate higher. So that is the important message given in this chapter. So again, this chapter of Karma Yoga is referring to transforming lust into love. And lust is nothing but a perverted reflection of our love for Shri Radha Krishna, our eternal father and mother. And understanding that we are transcendental to the three modes of material nature, to the senses, to the mind, to the intelligence, we should steady our mind, we should control this lower level. So again, if you are the CEO of a company, then you want to make sure that all your subordinates follow your orders. So we need to make sure that they are following the orders and of a Parameshwar, of Lord Shri Krishna. So we are eternal servant of Lord Shri Krishna, and all our activities should be dovetailed, not crowtailed, dovetailed to please Lord Shri Krishna. And that by doing that, we will conquer the insatiable enemy, lust. Hare Krishna. This is where the chapter ends, and in the next class we'll start with chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge. Shrimad Bhagavad-Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Go Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.